The next match on the card is the Texas Tornado and Dino Bravo. The Texas Tornado, as you remember, is actually Kerry Von Erich, but they bill him as Texas Tornado. I'm curious. He's at one point one of the biggest stars in wrestling. Why don't you go with the Kerry Von Erich billing? You still refer to him as that occasionally, but the name on the screen, the graphic, the way he's billed is the Texas Tornado. Is that just because Vince wanted to own it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Pretty simple. I mean, Vince saw him, and it was a name that he and Kerry came up with, and it's a name that he could market and own. So it's a lot easier to go out and market something that you own versus marketing something that somebody else owns or that someone else created.
So let me ask, is it just random and arbitrary when Ric Flair comes over? He's not billed as the Nature Boy. He's just billed as Ric Flair. So what's the rhyme or reason that goes into a decision like, okay, we're going to call him Ric Flair, but this guy, he needs a little something extra.
They call him the Nature Boy Ric Flair. They did call Kerry the Texas Tornado Kerry Von Erich. They refer to him both ways, but he was brought in as the Texas Tornado. That's a name they wanted to brand. That was what they wanted to call him. So if you're going to, it's confusing when you continually refer to someone, well, he's the Texas Tornado, well, he's Kerry Von Erich.
But you create that confusion. Why don't you just call him Kerry?
You do create that confusion by going back and referring to a name that you don't own. So if you want to own a name and establish a name, then you're going to refer to him by that name. You're not going to refer to him as a name that he was known by somewhere else, where you're not going to reap the rewards from that after the fact. You'll still own Texas Tornado. You create Texas Tornado. You own that intellectual property. And that's what Vince did. That's what the WWF did. With Ric Flair, they broke that rule. With a lot of guys, they've broken that rule.
Well, that's what I was going to ask is, do you think they still try to adhere to that? Because Kevin Nash comes back as Kevin Nash now.
Sometimes they do. But the biggest pop he got is when he came back as Diesel in the Royal Rumble.
Okay. I don't want to get hot about it. Let's talk about Dino Bravo. Dino Bravo, this is last WrestleMania. French-Canadian guy, untimely demise, pretty bad situation where he ends his time with us here. The story that has made the rumors and innuendo is that he was executed in his den, had the remote control in his hand, and was involved in some sort of underworld dealings with cigarettes. Did you guys have any inclination that Dino Bravo was a connected guy? I don't know that he was a made guy, but he had some sort of shenanigans this in his life.
No, absolutely not.
Did the company?
I have no idea. Dino wasn't around. After Dino left and Dino, whether he retired or what he did, he wasn't around. So I never had any dealings with him. I didn't have the concern, frankly, of what the hell Dino Bravo was doing.
You just didn't have a relationship with him.
No, I didn't. And he wasn't around to have that relationship.
Is he the only guy you can think of that had maybe a mob-related execution in wrestling?
An alleged mob execution in wrestling? No.
Yeah. There's been more?
Allegedly.
Where the guys were shot in the back of the head?
Allegedly.
Give me another one.
Well, there's a story that has gone around about Gino Hernandez allegedly having a bullet in his head. I don't know if that's true or not. I know what we were told, what his mother was told, and what his mother shared with us, which was not that he was shot, that he overdosed.
Michael Hayes doesn't believe he overdosed.
But I don't believe he overdosed either.
Okay.
But I do know what the autopsy said, and the autopsy said he had more cocaine in his body than a human could possibly ingest. And
have you tested that before?
Have I? No, but I knew Gino very well, and I knew Gino knew his limits.
Yeah.
He partied, but he also knew his limits.
Right.
And that just didn't fit the
right.
MO, if you will. So, yeah, I mean, that's the only other one that I know of that. But I don't know that happened. I like I said, the autopsy and the official report was that he OD'd. He being Gino Hernandez.
Okay. Well, let's move along to the next match. It's the British Bulldog and the Warlord. This is the Battle of the Full Nelsons. Who booked this shit?
I was doing TV at the time. Yeah, we watched that, didn't we?
Yeah,
it was rough.
It was brutal. Let's run through this. Texas Tornado, Kerry Von Erich gets 3 minutes. British Bulldog and Warlord get 8. The next match is the Nasty Boys, Brian Knobbs and Jerry Sags. They take on the Hart Foundation. Have a pretty decent match for what it is. 12 minutes here for this one, and there is a title change. This is Bret Hart's last WrestleMania as a tag guy. He's going to go into WrestleMania 8 against Roddy Piper and win the Intercontinental title and have a good little push for himself, and really begins the build to the main event and to the world titles. Neidhart, of course, would then go on to do lots of other stuff. But I'm sure you've got some fun Nasty Boy stories. Ric Flair has a dozen of them. I know you've got to have a good Nasty Boy story you can share with us. I don't know when we'll talk about them again, so this is as good a chance as any.
Oh, the Nasty Boys were great. They were a lot of fun. They were there with Willie Nelson back at the hotel getting ready for that night. Imagine that. So, yeah, they were wild. They were a little crazy, but they were always good for a good time.
We kind of skipped over it a minute ago, but I wanted to mention to you or ask you, when the Rockers were taking on the much bigger tag team of Barbarian and Haku, they make it a point in their promo to say that they are tag team specialists. And then all the way throughout the match, they are constantly referred to as tag team specialists. It feels like this is the common theme whenever it's a smaller tag team taking on a bigger tag team. If it's smaller guys, you just say, well, we're tag team specialists.
Well, that was the selling point of the Rockers. They weren't necessarily as big as the other guys, and frankly stole it from the Rock and Roll Express, because the Rock and Roll Express were billed as tag team specialists. And when the Rockers came in, they were billed as tag team specialists. So it wasn't just for WrestleMania. It was for their entire career. And they were a great tag team. And
so let me ask you this,
they were specialists.
If you're stealing it from, I appreciate that you said you stole it from the Rock and Roll Express. I think a lot of people have thought for a long time that the Rockers were kind of a ripoff of the Rock and Roll Express. But at that time, if you could have them, why wouldn't you just go get them? Why wouldn't you guys have just signed the Rock and Roll Express?
Who would you rather have?
Fair enough.
There you go.
Okay. They defeat the Hart Foundation, the Nasty Boys do, rather. And so now, Bret's not obligated to be in this tag team anymore. He goes and does big, great stuff. Did you guys have any real plan for Jim Neidhart, or is he kind of, for lack of a better word, just a ship without a sail without Bret?
Well, there were plans for both guys, and you go back and you look at, was it WrestleMania 4 or 5 where we did the Battle Royal that Bret won?
That was 4.
Okay. The idea in 4 was to split up the Hart Foundation.
Okay, and here we are at 7. It's just now happening.
Here we are. Well, no, we tried it then, and it didn't work,
Bret just wasn't
way
getting
back
over.
then. And neither one of them got over on their own. And they got back together, and it just, let's try it again.